Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Legacy of Bronze by Bryce O'Connor and T.L. Greylock. Narrated by Kate Redding. Part 1. Chapter 1. I'll use the sharp end next time. If you're going to stab me with that, may I suggest you try the sharp end? Sasha gestured to the rusty arrowhead protruding out the back of the boy's fist, as non-threateningly as one can gesture when one is flanked by 4 immaculate, obsidian-clad elite griffins, and one is carrying the spear one made famous. The Arch-Commander of Arconia shifted his stance slightly, causing the sun to flash angrily off the blade of his spear and the boy to flinch. The dirty white fletching, such as it was, shivered in Sasha's direction. "Your courage is commendable, my friend," Sasha went on, taking care to keep his voice light, as though he were speaking of seashells or an exquisite vintage of wine. "Do you have a bow with which to practice?" Behind Sasha came a minute sound of impatience from one of the griffins. It grated on him, but his smile for the boy never wavered. Next time he would bring only his own men, those he trusted, not these arrogant enforcers, no matter the Archduke's orders. The question served its purpose, turning the boy's fear into confusion. He shook his head. "Rotted." "That's a shame," Sasha said. "A good bow, if properly cared for, can outlive the hunter who draws it. Perhaps I can offer you one?" He looked over his shoulder and flicked his fingers at the closest griffin. "I require your bow." The man hesitated, his gaze narrowing at the prospect of handing over his sleek, perfectly tuned bow, an instrument of death worth more than this boy's family required to live for a year. Sasha held that gaze, waited for the man to break. They always did. Sasha noted the very moment the griffin's eyes went distant, and knew this was one who would complain to his commander. Let him. At last the griffin stepped forward with a single smart stride and handed the bow to Alexandre de Minos, Arch-Commander of Arconia. If Sasha's smile was that much sharper when he turned back to the boy, the sight of the bow in his hand surely outweighed it. The boy took half a step, his fist relaxing around the arrow, then froze, his gaze darting between the bow and Sasha's face, astonishment threatening to disarm his wary features. Sasha went down to one knee and set his spear in the dirt near his foot, then held the bow out. "Go on. You must learn the feel of her, and she of you." The arrow dropped from the boy's hand as he came forward, his fingers reaching out for the smooth, time-polished ash. "Can you take care of her?" The eyes that met Sasha's were wide. "I will. I promise." "Good. What's your name, friend?" "Chris." The boy held Sasha's gaze, despite the prize in his hands. "Chris? Short for Cristobal?" The boy shook his head and lifted his chin ever so slightly. "Christovin." Sasha nodded slowly. "An old name. It suits you. Now, Chris, do you think we could revisit my request to speak with your brother?" The boy nodded. "He's fishing. Papa gives him one afternoon in 4 to fish." Sasha got to his feet, keeping the spear blade pointed at the ground. "Silver trout? Burrons?" Chris smiled. "Those, yes. But he has a secret spot for striped reds." "My favourite," Sasha said, keeping his voice low and sharing in the boy's delight. "I can bring you there." Sasha felt, more than heard, the shift in the 4 griffins at his back, a breath, a tightening of a hand on a sword hilt, a collective readying. "I've kept you from your chores long enough already. I'm sure we can find the place if you describe it to me." Chris rattled off directions readily enough. South to the stream, a grove of birch trees just past the small stone bridge, a pool hidden behind boulders and beneath a beach, perfect for climbing, and Sasha allowed himself one last smile. He leaned down and placed one hand on the boy's shoulder. "You take good care of this now," he said, looking down at the bow, large in Chris's hands. "I don't want to learn you've let it rot away. Wax for the string after every use. A little grease, bare if you can get it, but anything will do, smoothed on the wood a few times a year. And never dry fire. Do you know what that means?" Chris shook his head. "Only pull and release if you have an arrow nocked. Can you remember that?" The boy nodded, his face solemn. "Until we meet again, Christovin." Sasha winked at the boy, regretted it immediately, and then turned to face the griffins. Unyielding faces stared back at him. "Let's go." The way to the fishing pool was as the boy described, and surely due to its proximity to the village, not as secret as he thought. A carpenter and his apprentice stared as they skirted the edge of the village, the table taking shape beneath their hands, forgotten at the sight of 5 armed men. A woman took hold of her child, eyes never straying from the strangers. They would not know his face, not here, 5 days' ride from Arconia, but they would know the griffins for what they were, members of the private guard of the Archduke, the small premier fighting force in Arconia, matched only in all of Balara by the Grimoros of Rhea. The story of the day the griffins came to the village would be told around hearths for years to come, and Arch-Commander de Minos could only hope it would be a story told without hate and fear. When they passed the stone bridge, Sasha caught sight of the thick limbs of the beech tree, one arcing over the gently rippling pool, and dropped into a crouch. The griffins mirrored his movement, and together as 5 they crept through the chin-tickling grass to gain the vantage point offered by the tall bank. From there, Sasha saw his quarry situated between the beech's roots. The young man held his pole with the casual disregard of someone who does not much care whether or not a fish might deign to nibble on the hook. His free arm served as a pillow for his head, and one foot dangled in the pool, the water embracing his toes. The sight struck Sasha with unexpected force. But then he had seen Eska de Caraval occupy such a pose once, albeit without the fishing pole, and he forced himself to steady the sudden acceleration of his heart with several deep breaths. The griffins, hunched around him like some flock of malignant crows, seemed too intent on their prey to notice the change in the Arch-Commander, and it was gone nearly as quickly as it had come. When Sasha rose to his feet, he was every inch the protector of the 7 cities and celestial knight of Balara, a commander of men, the spear at his side a reminder of the death he carried with him. A wave of his hand dispersed the griffins to form a perimeter, filtering silently through the grass and wildflowers until they had contained the young man between the stream and their swords. "Hector Morelli!" Sasha called out. The young man started and fumbled for his fishing pole as he twisted in search of the voice naming him. "Stand in the name of Alexei Arcturos de Vauquelin-Preux, Archduke of Arconia." Unarmed, slender, not altogether graceful, if his scramble to his feet was any indication, unthreatening. The eyes that looked up at Sasha were, however, quick to ignite with mistrust. There was always danger in mistrust, Or at least, danger could be born of the impulses that so often followed. All of this channeled through the Arch-Commander's mind with quick precision. And then there was the matter of his talents. "I am Alexandre de Minos, Arch-Commander of Arconia, and I stand before you on behalf of our Archduke." Sasha kept his voice calm but commanding, the kind of voice that was effective on frightened soldiers and uncertain citizens alike. Hector Mirelli's gaze darted away from Sasha to take in the 4 figures surrounding him. The griffins, no, malevolent crows really was a better term, loomed. "I thought you might come for me," Hector said. Unexpected, but not impossible. Though discretion had been requested, word would have begun to spread of the recent activities carried out by the griffins on behalf of the Archduke. "Then you know why I am here," Sasha said. "The Archduke's offer is generous, Hector. A monthly stipend, training, compensation to your family for your lost labor. And all I need to do is enslave myself to the Archduke's army." Hector's voice did not waver. The young man seemed to have found his resolve. Under different circumstances, Sasha might have found much to like about him, might have seen potential. "That is hardly a fair assessment of the offer. You have valuable skills, Hector. Do you not wish to make use of them for your city?" Never taking his eyes from the young man's face, Sasha descended the bank and came to stand on Hector's level. 300 years ago, I could have been hunted for those same skills," Hector spat out. "Hunted like a rabid dog by men from the city you say is mine." 300 years is a long time, Sasha said. "Consider how your family will prosper." He waited, letting the thought of enough coins to ensure security and comfort for years to come do the work for him. Afterward, he would have said the wait was about to prove worthwhile. He would have sworn the young man's jaw relaxed, the mistrust seeping from the brown eyes. He did swear, in fact, to no avail. But the griffin moved, and that was enough. It was innocuous, one hand going to a sword hilt, but deliberate. Of that Sasha had no doubt, meant to provoke and instill fear. He knew the gesture well enough, had used it and its variations many times. And Hector flinched, only his flinch manifested in the form of a rush of flame spewing from his hand. It arced out, streaking toward the griffin, who leaped sideways, the heat from the fire distorting the air around Sasha. But he saw clearly enough the arrow, loosed from the bow of a different griffin, sprout from Hector's shoulder. In the same instant the flames ignited the grass where the first griffin had been standing. The young man twisted as he fell, his eyes wide, one hand reaching uselessly for the arrow buried in his flesh. Before he hit the ground, the Arch-Commander was moving. The spear in his hand came alive, every movement perfectly timed with his feet, 3 swift strides, and he had the satisfaction of seeing the griffin's arrogant expression shatter into sudden fear, the moment before the shaft of the spear made contact with his jaw. The man flew backward and landed with a bone-jarring thud. Sasha turned back to Hector's fallen form as cries of protest rose from the griffin's companions. One took a step toward the Arch-Commander, sword sliding from its scabbard. "I'll use the sharp end next time," Sasha said, his voice laced with promise. For a moment there was silence, no bird song, no insects chirping in the grass. Even the stream seemed to hold its breath. And then the man drew back, and Sasha lowered his spear. "I gave one order," he growled. He scanned the faces of the 3 standing griffins. "Your commander may encourage the use of that paralyzing poison on your arrows, but you will never again use it in my presence." He waited until all three dropped their gazes, not in contrition, Sasha knew, but at least in understanding that further disobedience would result in bloodshed. It would have been an interesting fight, Sasha mused, as he went to kneel at Hector's side. He had never had occasion to test himself against a griffin, much less three at once. They were notoriously quick and prided themselves on being unpredictable, but then so did Sasha. But no, they could not be punished for the actions of the fourth, no matter how certain Sasha was that they had been determined to light a spark that would justify retaliation. Any further discipline against them must be done through the proper channels. Sasha put a hand on Hector's shoulder, noting the young man's body was a tight knot of frozen muscles. Only his eyes seemed free to act, and they rolled wildly across the blue expanse of the sky above. "I apologize, Hector," Sasha said quietly, hoping the young man could hear. "You will recover from this." Most likely, at least. The poison was known to be deadly for some, but they usually perished within moments in those cases. A shadow blocked out the sun from Hector's face. Sasha, intent on feeling the young man's heartbeat, did not look up. "Arch-Commander, he attacked us. He would have turned on you next. Such actions are a crime, punishable by death." Sasha pushed down the rage that whispered at him to pick up his spear once more. At last he looked up, taking care to keep his features cold and even. No heat, no fury for them to act on. "Who are you to pass sentence on him? I was not aware the Griffins of Arconia had become a law unto themselves. We are permitted to act in the defence of our lives, Arch-Commander, and in the preservation of yours. We would die to defend Silent Spear." Sasha wanted to laugh. He rose to his full height, pleased to see the Griffin stiffen to attention. "Do you think to flatter me?" It was not a question the Griffin was meant to answer. A fact the man understood. "What are you called?" "Robespierre, Arch-Commander." "Tell me, Robespierre, do you truly believe your life was in danger?" The question brought a crease to the Griffin's forehead. "The carrier released his flames, Arch-Commander. Instinct, not malice." Sasha took a step, eliminating the distance between them. "He was afraid. Of you. Of me. We who have the privilege of authority must use it wisely. We are armed. We come in numbers. We disrupt. We frighten. We hold lives within our hands. Do you really think our own people deserve to be afraid of us?" Sasha scanned the man's face, searching for, well, if not enlightenment, at least something that suggested original thought. He found none. "If nothing else," Sasha went on, letting the smallest of smiles tug at the corners of his mouth, "imagine the Archduke's displeasure if you were to kill this young man." There, a twitch in the cheek. "The Commendatore wants him brought to Arconia with all the rest. Do you wish to be the one to inform him that Hector Mirelli, a carrier of reputedly tremendous ability, is dead? And by your hand too?" Sasha did not wait for an answer. He looked over Robespierre's shoulder at the other two Griffins, still on their feet. If resentment had an odour, Sasha's nostrils would be full of it. "One of you will see to your companion. The other will help Robespierre tend to our friend Hector, and you will do so with the attention and care you would grant your mother, or your favourite sword, if you don't remember what it feels like to hold compassion for another human in your heart." Robespierre saluted and began to move away, but Sasha restrained him with a strong hand on his shoulder. Their eyes met once more. Arch-Commander de Minos lowered his voice. "If he dies, on the way to Arconia, there will be consequences, and you will not like them. Chapter 2. Fear is stoked by those who know how to control it. If I may, Arch-Commander, I heard whispers of dark spirits. Sasha contemplated the soldier standing before him. She had regained her breath, having ridden with some haste into the outpost moments before, and stated her facts with precision and without adornment, a quality that always pleased Sasha immensely. But this statement, this quiet addition, tacked on at the end and spoken with trepidation and nervous energy, as though the soldier could not quite decide whether she ought to say it at all, was something else entirely. They were standing outside the small barracks that housed the unit stationed at the convergence of the river and the main road between Arconia and Toridium. The sound of a farrier's hammer rang out in the evening air, and light from the officer's house cast a warm glow on the soldier facing Sasha. He was suddenly very glad he had received her report outside, away from the ears of the officers and the 4 griffins. He didn't know these soldiers, only that they led a quiet life, a peaceful presence, in a land that had not known strife since the Great Rising and the downfall of the Alescuan dynasty. If they were as superstitious as the farmers they watched over, word of dark spirits befouling a river with rotten fish and blackened water would soon spread and send the region into a frenzy. In Sasha's experience, a frenzy had an unfortunate habit of giving rise to a mob, and mobs were not known for their conscientious behaviour. Dark spirits? Fish die, soldier. The water will run clean again soon enough. The captain of this outpost will see that the river is cleared. It is not always for us to understand the whims of nature, Sasha said. But, Arch-Commander, there was also a fire the night the river turned black. A fire where no fire ought to have been. You said there was a storm that night. Surely lightning is the culprit. Sasha tried to keep his impatience from showing. The look on the soldier's face told him he was unsuccessful. She looked down, dropping her soldierly manners for the first time. What is it? She hesitated, not quite meeting his gaze. Sasha sighed. Your name, soldier? Sevilla Roussel, 2nd Shield, Arch-Commander. 2nd Shield Roussel. You cannot be faulted for not knowing me, but I assure you I do not censure my soldiers for speaking their minds. If you believe it important, tell me. The woman straightened and tucked her arms behind her back. When she spoke, her voice had reclaimed the confident tone with which she had begun her report. The fire burned on a rocky outcrop overlooking the river, Arch-Commander. It is known to be without vegetation or any other material that might succumb to a lightning strike. When I heard this, I went to see it for myself, and can confirm. The rocks bore scorch marks, but there was no ash, no charred remains. A bell rang to call the outpost to the evening meal. The farrier's hammer went silent. Faint laughter from the other end of the compound rippled through the gathering dark. A dog trotted by, no doubt in search of scraps. Sasha waited until all was quiet. Are there known carriers in the vicinity of this village? He asked. Darkness had made the soldier's face more difficult to read, but her black braids gleamed, catching and holding all the available light. Roussel shook her head. No, Arch-Commander. Sasha turned and paced away, then back again, coming to a halt less than an arm's length from the woman. Do you know what happens when people get wind of some terror in the night? What do you mean? Innocent people die, Sasha said, hoping she understood the urgency in his voice, even though she could likely see little of his face. Fear is stoked by those who know how to control it, and that fear is used to punish. Punish who? Sasha was quiet for a moment. When you were a child, who did the bullies torture ceaselessly? Roussel's sudden understanding was audible as she drew in a sharp breath. The weak. And those who are different from the rest. The child who cannot speak, for instance, or the old woman who keeps to herself. I have never been to this village, soldier, but I have been many places, and everywhere I go, people are the same. If this fear spreads, someone who does not deserve it will be blamed. Say nothing further of dark spirits. Or carriers, he added. Yes, Arch-Commander. The darkness between them grew heavy with silence. Then, is that it, then? The river gets cleared and we pretend nothing happened? I never said that, Sasha said. He was already calculating the delay in his return to Arconia, and then there was Hector Mirelli and the Griffins to consider. They could be sent ahead. Of course, the Arch-Commander of Arconia would never make what was likely an inconsequential and meaningless detour into a remote valley simply to gain a few days of freedom from the dark presence of the Griffins. Never. You and I will ride to this village in the morning. I will see it for myself. Inconsequential. Yes, that was a word the Archduke might use. Nothing harsher, of course, because he had a way of conveying that without words. Sasha had seen it deployed on others many times. The silence, one eyebrow raised ever so slightly, the lips set in a weary, long-suffering line. Sasha, as he looked down at the tainted water, could feel that his own mouth was twisted into something he fancied resembled the faces of the dead fish that floated on the surface. Not because of the stench, though it was atrocious. No, despite the scene in front of him, it was the steady flow of whispers emanating from behind him that had him grimacing. Is it really him? The Arch-Commander? The Scourge of Edwin, they call him. And so on. He ought to have foreseen this, and ought to have stayed away for that reason. After all, the Arch-Commander of Arconia doesn't just turn up in a remote village without good cause. His presence would no doubt add fuel to the stories circulating about the river. Sasha lifted his gaze, trying to block out the murmurs. And the fire? He nodded in the direction of a bald rise overlooking the village on the opposite bank. Up there, I take it? He asked, glancing at second shield Roussel. Yes, Arch-Commander. Shall I show you? No, thank you. I'll go myself. Sasha gestured toward the villagers. Spread word that the outpost is sending a party to help clear the fish from the river, and ask them about their supplies of fresh water. Your captain will want to know if they will be in need of drinking water from another source. Yes, Arch-Commander. Roussel turned, and Sasha was glad to see her attention immediately drew the villagers to her. Perhaps he might have a few moments of quiet once he crossed the river. That illusion was shattered as he remounted his horse and urged the mare into the shallow waters. Vice Lord! Sasha, intent on encouraging his horse, who was snorting at the foul odours rising from the black water now swirling around her legs, did not at first realize this shout was meant for him. Vice Lord! Frowning, Sasha turned in his saddle to see a man splashing upstream near the bank, his arms waving about him like sapling trees in a storm, his robe dragging in the water. Are you addressing me? Sasha nudged the mare to face the newcomer. Yes, my Lord Captain. Pardon me, my Lord Captain. The man splashed to a halt and bent over at the waist, his torso heaving as he wheezed for air. None, Sasha began. None of those words belong... He trailed off. Oh, never mind. Is there something you would say? The man heaved himself.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?